2024 is now behind us, and it's time to rank every movie I saw that year. I'm going to be talking spoilers for all these movies, so if you haven't seen one of them yet and don't want to get spoiled, I suggest you watch this video later. Also, if you want more content like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe. With that out of the way, let's get started. First up is Kung Fu Panda 4, and this is going in C tier. Even though this one doesn't ruin the franchise or anything, this is easily the weakest one so far. Poe was still good in this movie, like Jack Black was giving it his all as usual, but his arc in this movie about like trust and accepting change was not as good and interesting as his previous arcs. There's also some stuff they copied and pasted from the last two movies, like Poe has to go to a city to fight a villain again. A lot of people pointed out that the chameleon is way too similar to Kai in the sense that she wants to steal other kung fu masters' power to become super powerful and all that. Speaking of the chameleon, she's easily the weakest villain so far. Like Viola Davis is doing a good job at voicing her, but she's super forgettable and generic. Aquafina's character was fine, I guess. I wasn't really attached to her and I didn't really care about her. Master Shifu and the Furious Five are barely in this one, which sucks, but I guess they don't really have much to do anymore. This movie's not all bad though. Poe's dads were pretty entertaining. The fight scenes are still well choreographed, and the animation is beautiful. Overall, it's a pretty mid film, but it's not horrible. Up next is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and a lot of you might disagree with this, but it's going in D tier. I have never been this pissed after watching a movie until this one. Don't get me wrong, this movie has a few good things, like Paul Rudd and Kumail Nanjiani are pretty funny, and the effects are pretty cool, but those are the only good things this piece of shit has. First off, there are way too many characters. You can cut half of the cast out, and the story would remain exactly the same. This is another movie that had a boring, generic, forgettable villain, and he just went out like a little bitch. This could have been a good movie, like it had some good ideas, like I like how the villain is like immune to the proton packs and whatnot. The Kumail Nanjiani firebending stuff was kind of cool and interesting. It's just that the movie executes those ideas poorly, which is why I can't rank this movie any higher. After that mess, we have The Fall Guy, and it's going in B tier. I had a fun time with this movie. It was very entertaining, the action scenes were cool, and it was very funny. I like the premise of this movie of a stuntman like being put in like real dangerous situations. Like I thought that was cool. The characters in this movie are actually pretty likable and charming. Ryan Gosling had good chemistry with the rest of the cast, especially Amelia Blunt. Aaron Taylor Johnson killing a stuntman was pretty interesting, and it's hard not to be entertained while watching this movie. Some nitpicks I have with the film is that I saw a few twists coming from a mile away. Like, I figured out that Hannah Waddingham's character was evil before it was revealed to us. The movie had a fake out death scene involving Ryan Gosling, even though I knew he was fine and alive. The pros far outweigh the cons, though, and I hope stuntmen get more attention and love. Then we have If, and it's also going in B tier. This is also a very entertaining movie, and kids will definitely enjoy this flick. I will say that it's a little slow at the beginning, like it takes a while for them to show the ifs, but when the ifs do show up, the movie gets better. The CGI in the ifs is fantastic. Like, I genuinely believe that they're interacting with the humans. Like The Fall Guy, it has a lot of charming and likable characters also, and I really like this scene. It's very creative. There are like two or three emotional scenes in here. You're not gonna cry when you watch them, but you're gonna get emotionally invested in them. Also, I like the twist at the end where it's revealed that Ryan Reynolds is an If himself. Like, I thought that was cool. The movie's not perfect though. The movie plays it very safe and like nothing really unexpected happens in the movie. I feel like most people will forget this movie even exists a year from now, and there are definitely better kids movies out there. The movie's not bad, but it's not great either. Up next is the Garfield movie, and it's going in C tier. This movie is a soulless cash grab that no one will ever remember. One of the problems in this movie is Garfield himself. He's still lazy and loves lasagna, but he's also a whiny, annoying dipshit in this. Also, I don't understand why Chris Pratt keeps getting cast to voice these iconic animated characters. Like, who's he gonna voice next? Mickey Mouse? Popeye? Charlie Brown? Garfield, Odie, and Samuel L. Jackson have to do a heist because that's exactly what comes to mind when you think of a Garfield movie. Like The Fall Guy, it's very predictable, but unlike The Fall Guy, this movie doesn't have any likable characters or any funny jokes. Like, I think there's only one, maybe two good jokes in here. The only reason this movie isn't in D tier for me is because it didn't piss me off. Next up is Inside Out 2, and this is the first movie that's going in A tier. Although it's not as good as the original, this is one of the best Pixar movies we've had in a while. Like the first movie, this one has adult themes, and I feel like a lot of people will relate to what Riley is going through in this movie. Anxiety was a great addition to the cast, like Maya Hawke did a good job voicing her, and out of all the new emotions, she's my favorite one. The other new emotions aren't bad or anything like that, it's just they don't really do much in the movie. Like, embarrassment does a thing here or there, but other than that, they don't do much. The original five emotions are still great in this, like Amy Poehler is still giving her all as joy. Fear and disgust feel more important this time around, even though they're recast. Anger is pretty funny, and sadness is pretty decent too, even though she has less to do this time around. The animation was beautiful to look at, which is expected out of a Pixar movie, and overall, I had a fun time with this flick. I did feel like they copied and pasted some stuff from the first movie and put it into this one, like an emotion trying to change Riley for the better, only to change her for the worst, or like some emotions like journeying through Riley's mind, trying to find their way back to headquarters, like that stuff. I felt like was repetitive, but the pros far outweigh the cons, and this is a very enjoyable movie. Then we have Despicable Me 4, and it's going in C tier. This movie is dumb fun, even though I think this is the weakest out of all the Despicable Me movies. Like the last movie, there is way too much going on in this one. Like, you have Gru trying to like get his son to like him and like do a heist with like this girl, and you got like Lucy trying to be a hairstylist. You got the Mega Minions doing their own thing, and there's like some other stuff that's going on. Like, it's just way too much. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but Gru was more obnoxious in this movie. Like, he's trying to get people to like him, but like he's like super awkward and like people don't really like him. This feels out of character for him because in the first movie, he's popping kids' balloons and freezes people when he's in line. Not to mention, this was never brought up in the previous movies. The villains in this movie are like super generic and forgettable. Like, the main one, voiced by Will Ferrell, is like French, and he wants to get revenge on Gru because he like put him in prison. And he's only really a villain at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie. You also have this old lady in a wheelchair who doesn't really do much except like give Will Ferrell the location of Gru's baby so he could kidnap him. Sofia Vergara is also just there. Like, there are way too many characters and way too much shit happening in this movie. I'm probably not gonna rewatch this film anytime soon, but it's harmless and kids will enjoy it. Deadpool and Wolverine is up next, and this is easily going in S tier. This was the movie that I was most excited to see in 2024, and man oh man, did it deliver. Deadpool and Wolverine were the best characters of the movie to the surprise of no one, and Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's chemistry is one of the things that carries this movie. A lot of the jokes were funny, which is expected out of a Deadpool movie, and I'm glad that Disney let Ryan Reynolds and the other writers cook. I love the cameos in this movie, even though I love the cameos in No Way Home more. The cameos in this movie, though, were a bit more unexpected. Like, I feel like all of us knew that Toby and Andrew were gonna show up in No Way Home, but I think most people did not know that Wesley Snipes was gonna come back as Blade for this movie. Human Torch and Gambit were probably my favorite cameos in this movie, with the former dying because he had a potty mouth, and the latter making a name for himself on the internet. I also like the action scenes in this movie. Like, they were really creative and really well done. Now, even though this movie's in S tier, I have a couple of nitpicks with it. Even though she's not a bad villain, Cassandra Nova's not a great villain either. Her powers are cool, but she's pretty much just evil because. It also kind of sucks that the characters from the first two Deadpool movies get sidelined in this one. Like, none of them except for Peter are really relevant to this movie. But I still love it despite those flaws. This was a nice tribute to the Fox Marvel movies. Then we have Transformers 1, and this is also going in S tier. I was genuinely surprised that I love this movie because I'm not a big Transformers fan. This movie's got everything. It's got great characters, amazing action scenes, and funny jokes. I would say that the best part about this flick is the relationship between Orion Pax, aka Optimus Prime, and D16, aka Megatron. The way they transition from best friends to enemies is really well done. Like, this film could rival something like X-Men First Class. There were a lot of dark and serious moments throughout the movie, most of them obviously involving Optimus Prime and Megatron. The movie has its fair share of jokes, though, most of them coming from Bumblebee. And thank God he was funny in this, because a lot of people didn't like the first trailer because it made the movie look childish and kid friendly. And while I didn't hate that trailer, I can understand where they're coming from. The third act of this movie was really amazing. Like, the action scenes were great. There were a lot of dark and serious moments, and I really loved this scene.
No. No, 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 no. Why? Why did you do that? Why? No. I'm done saving you.
And no, I did not love it because Megatron let Optimus Prime fall to his death. I guess the one nitpick I have with the movie was that Steve Buscemi's character didn't really do much. But other than that, this movie's great. Venom: The Last Dance is up next, and I'm putting it in B tier. Like the last two Venom movies, this movie is just dumb fun, and Venom and Eddie carried. The plot of the movie is very simple. It's just Eddie and Venom running away from the military and Null's xenophages, and I don't think that plot's as interesting as like the plots of the last two movies. Speaking of Null, he's barely in the movie and doesn't really do anything that important. The other characters are okay, I guess. Like, I was pretty entertained by the hippie family. It was cool to see Mrs. Chen again, and I was pretty indifferent on the military guy and the scientists. It's also a bummer that Venom can't fully transform, because if he does that, the Xenophage will find him and Eddie and kill them, and when he finally does fully transform, it's to do a dance with Mrs. Chen. I will say that it was cool seeing other symbiotes. Like, the CGI on them was good, and the fight scenes with them were entertaining to watch. I was also surprised that Venom died in this movie, and I got sad. Like, I didn't cry or anything, but still. He'll probably be back somehow if the post-credit scenes lead up to anything, but I doubt that Null's returning. Overall, I had a fun time with it, even though it's not a masterpiece or anything. Then we have Wicked, and it's going in A tier. Like Transformers 1, I was genuinely surprised that I really liked this movie. Ariana Grande was actually the best character of the movie, believe it or not. Like, she's funny, she's charming, and she's super entertaining to watch on screen. Cynthia Erivo was also good in this movie, and I'm impressed that both her and Grande did their own stunts. This movie looks really amazing. The sets and costumes are great, like it's up there with something like Barbie, and they did a good job at like making Oz like such a distinct and unique place, and it makes me want to visit it if like it was real. The songs were also really catchy. My favorite song in the movie was probably Dancing Through Life. The movie does a good job at balancing the humor with some serious moments. I was actually really surprised that there were quite a few serious moments in the movie, and they're done pretty well. I guess my only complaint is that the movie's too long. As the movie was coming to the end, I definitely felt the runtime. But overall, I had a fun time watching Wicked. And finally, we have Sonic 3, and it's going in S tier. This movie is pretty much a Sonic fan's wet dream. It has everything. You got Keanu Reeves doing a great job voicing Shadow the Hedgehog, who, by the way, was my favorite character of the entire movie. Jim Carrey's back and better than ever. He's playing both Eggman and Gerald in this movie, which is great. I like how Gerald is a little more serious and isn't just the same exact character as Eggman. And Eggman's arc in this movie was just fantastic. Him learning to appreciate Agent Stone and him being a hero at the end was just so satisfying to see. Sonic's and Shadow's arcs in this movie are also great. They're both dealing with grief, but they're handling it in very different ways. Sonic remains hopeful and optimistic despite losing Longclaw, while Shadow becomes vengeful after losing Maria. The journeys that both characters go through are fantastic. This movie is a lot more mature than the last two, and there were quite a few emotional scenes, like Maria's death or Tom getting injured. Those scenes were done really well, and it makes me more pissed that Sonic 3 didn't get any nomination at the Oscars. Despite this movie being more serious, it still has a lot of jokes though, most of them involving Jim Carrey, and a lot of them land. A lot of the best scenes happen in the last third, which has pretty much everything a Sonic fan can ask for. You've got Super Sonic and Super Shadow fighting each other. You've got them talking on the moon about the people they've lost. You've got them doing the coolest dap ever and teaming up. And you also got Eggman pissing on the moon. Like, it's just a great final third. Now, despite me praising this movie for the last minute or so, there are a few problems with it. Kristen Ritter didn't really add much to the movie. You can cut her out and you will lose nothing. I felt that Shadow's arc in this movie was somewhat similar to Knuckles' arc in the last movie, but it's done a little better here, so. Also, Amy and Metal Sonic showing up at the end credits scene was awesome. I really enjoyed Sonic 3, and I'm super excited for Sonic 4 coming out in 2027. And that's my tier list for the movies I watched in 2024. Do you guys agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. Peace!